Hi, I'm Professor Gregory Golda from the Communications program here at Sacred Heart University. This is Media Matrix. We're live in the studio with Patrick Scully, an independent journalist based in Boston. And today we're going to have a conversation about his 23-year plus career as a media and communications analyst. He's been on national television several times. He has his own not a blog, as we say. He has his own website, and he has several national appearances to his credit. So over here is Jessica Shalou. She is also working on a video magazine production here at Sacred Heart University called The Pulse. And let's get started. Here we go. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
It's great to be here. It's a marvelous facility, and SHU obviously making their mark on the communications world with this program. It's great.
For sure. It's a wonderful facility. It's been an absolute explosion of
Wonderful.
productivity, and we're hoping that we keep putting it to good use like
Yes,
this and
absolutely.
bringing in professionals like yourself. So actually, I'm going to have Jessica start with your background, and we'll talk a little bit about your history and what got you to where you are.
Absolutely. Thanks.
All right, Jessica.
So as Professor Golda was explaining, a lot of what you've been involved with includes politics in some way. What kind of drove you in the direction of getting involved with politics?
Well, unfortunately, politics has become sort of a dirty word in our society these days, and that's really unfortunate. What drove me to politics in the beginning is that essentially at the local level too, the policies, public policy changes people's lives, hopefully for the good. And the best way to do that is to become involved in the process that does that. The political process is not a nasty, dirty world. Sure, there's corruption, and sure, there's folks that don't have the right motives, but there are, and I've worked with hundreds of people that have good moral judgment, care about people, and that's how you can make a positive difference in the world. So the way I approached it was I wanted to combine being in the media with politics so I can tell the story as I feel is as factual as possible. So that's basically what drove me. It really is a chance to make a difference in a positive way, and hopefully we're going to trend back towards that way. We'll see.
Media and politics do kind of have a nice connection,
Yes.
so that's cool that you can do that. Now, what has been your best political experience this far?
I would say my years as the communications director for the Senate Democrats in the Connecticut General Assembly was very formative, and for me, just very impactful. It was really a chance to see end results and see tangible results of what we were doing, a certain public policy for affordable housing in Hartford. When it was done, when it was built, we could go there and meet the people that were actually affected by this. And we dealt with sort of very issues that were kind of sensitive. We dealt with the death penalty and certain sorts of taxation and things like that. So it sort of ran the gamut, but it also gave me the opportunity to get involved in a lot of different ways. Instead of working on affordable housing, which is great, or taxation so that it's fair, I get to do kind of all of it together. And it was my job to tell the story of what was going on. That's what communications is at its very base, is knowing your audience and telling the story. In this case, it was our constituents, and the story was the purpose and the hopeful outcome of public policy. So that was a great time in my life and set me up for what I'm doing now.
Following politics, you do have your own company known as Scully Communications. What are kind of some challenges that you've come across with having your own company?
Well, it's sort of, it cuts both ways. It's great to be flexible, be able to take the clients that I want, to be able to work in areas that I want. Conversely, in any job or in any profession, there are parts of it that you love to do, and then there are parts of it that you're like, oh man, I got to get through this. And when you have your own company, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of scheduling. There's a lot of tedious parts of it. Sometimes research gets tedious for me. I prefer the presenting part of it. When I worked in the General Assembly, we had a whole team of researchers, which was the best possible because they would just bring this incredible, succinct and meaningful research to me, and I could just figure out how to tell. So, having my own company, the drawback is you have to do a lot of other things that aren't really exactly what you do. But if you don't do it, then you don't even have the opportunity to do the communications part of it. So having your own company is good for flexibility, not so good for the parts that you really don't like to do.
Kind of like being a restaurateur.
Exactly.
You got into it to cook, but you're running the register and you're
And you
doing
still
the
have the books.
scheduling and everything
Right,
else.
taxes and everything else. Yeah.
Right. So, tell me a little bit about your academic career and what launched you into the political sphere.
It really goes back quite a ways for me. When I was in senior year of high school, I interned at a radio station. Started to do a little bit of reporting. I went to Syracuse University, where I was in the Newhouse School for Public Communications as a broadcast journalism major. And at the same time, my interest, even then, ran both to media and politics, with a minor concentration in political science from the Maxwell School at Syracuse. So even during the summers of college, rather than get a waiter job like a lot of my friends, I was able to work in the news department of the local news radio station. So I got a lot of opportunity too. I mean, sure, anytime you get to a certain place, you say, well, I worked hard to get there. I had a lot of people helping me and had a lot of doors open for me. And then once that was open, I made the most of the opportunity. So Syracuse is a great university. Some of the best times of my life. It's just so cold.
We know cold too, and I'm from Buffalo, so we all know cold.
Exactly.
So as well as having your own company, you also have your own blog.
Yeah.
Can you give us a little bit of background about how that got started along with its name?
Yeah, it got started really as sort of a whim, kind of an afterthought. I had all these connections in state government and all these connections in national media. So I started this blog. I prefer not to call it a blog. The connotations are that you're sitting in mom's basement, typing away.
It's a political analysis.
It's a political analysis website. And then it sort of grew. I mean, it's kind of created a monster. It started getting more readership, and just by the people who I had contact with and their constituents and people who I had come in contact with on a national basis too, helped me along. I remember I did a TV spot with Soledad O'Brien, who was MSNBC, CNN. Now she has her own shop. And, I kept all those contacts. So that was a big help as well. The name of the blog is The Hanging Shad. For Connecticut folks, you might be able to appreciate it. It's designed to be clever, at least at the time. In 2000, you had the Hanging Chad controversy of the Bush-Gore election, where they were down there with the glasses trying to check out whether a Chad was hanging. And the Connecticut state fish is the shad. And I thought it was, when I was working in the legislature, I thought it was absolutely insane when we had a list of important public policy issues to address. We spent the day debating what the state fish should be. So it was kind of like what could be the absurdity of politics, but also the minutia of it. If you combine it, it became the hanging shad. Mm-hmm. I didn't think of it. A good friend of mine did. And it just kind of grew. And when I moved to Boston and became based there, I sort of opened it up to become sort of two-state based. But also, given the last 2 years, I've done a lot more. Almost exclusively national issues. I try to take a little bit of a different look at things. You can get hard news from any number of sources. You can get humor from The Onion. I'd like to think that mine is like somewhere in the middle. You can rely on its factual base, but it has some opinion and some fun.
That's something that I wanted to talk about. When I do read your analysis, I have a high confidence that what you're saying is based in research.
Yeah.
So we're living in this time now where there's this dark cloud around politics, and fake news is a weaponized term. We have a real mistrust of what we're seeing everywhere. People just don't know what is trustworthy, and honestly, it does take too much time out of somebody's day to do the research, to click on the links, to figure out if something is actually factual. So What is your response to this kind of blight of fake news?
Well, I think right up front, it makes me redouble my efforts to make sure that every word that I write, every quote that I use, every fact that I use is based in research and is based from me calling someone and talking to them, actual reporting. You have to be able, if you're going to be successful, you have to be able to have your audience be confident in what you're saying and what you're doing is factually accurate. We are in a really challenging time because this term fake news came about during the election because that's what it was. We had, right the week before the election, we had a story going around that the Pope endorsed Donald Trump. That was proliferated by person after person after person. And that's a little bit of my concern about what we call citizen journalists. A lot of them, as they would like to call themselves journalists, just perpetuate anything they read. And that's really a dangerous situation. So I think that people that want to be taken as serious, rather than just, okay, yeah, I looked this up, and, it's sourced, and it's sourced hard, and it takes a lot of time. I try to write my blog on a daily basis, and I've got other things going on, and sometimes it's hard. It takes me a day or two to find the time to research these things. And as you said, it's weaponized now. The current president has taken fake news, which was a term applied to people that were putting out things that were not factual. And now he applies it to anything that's critical of his administration. And that is really unfortunate. I mean, if there's a piece criticizing with some, and by the way, for somebody who hates leaks, his White House is the leakiest place in town. Back during Watergate, they used to have a crew of these henchmen type guys for Nixon that they called the plumbers, because they were supposed to fix the leaks. Well, this White House has a lot of leaks, and anything that is reported that the president doesn't like, they call fake news. So now even that term doesn't have meaning. I mean, it's kind of like when they say this is the most important thing. Well, if everything's the most important, then nothing is. If everything is fake news, then nothing is. So it's really it's dispiriting to a certain extent, but it makes people concentrate even more on doing it the right way.
Now, going further down that road, when fake news was on our radar screen before this election, it was pretty preposterous stuff. It was satirical. This looks like, more and more as every day goes by and more revelations come out, it looks like there was a concentrated effort by foreign sources to put disinformation into the public sphere to influence the election. And the behavior that we've been seeing around the administration certainly isn't making things any more clear.
Right.
So what's your analysis on, actually, what's your prediction on where it goes?
Right.
I hate to put you on the spot for a prediction, but
I think that we're in trouble. I don't think we know the whole story of the connections between foreign governments, particularly the Russians, and their influence on our election. As of now, I don't go so far as to say, like some people do, as fact, and it's not fact yet, that the Russians actually influenced the decision of the election to the point where it's not legitimate. I'm not there yet. You can argue about the Electoral College, but the fact is Trump won the Electoral College, he's president. I wish he would get that. You're president, you get it. Okay, you don't need to convince us that you had the most people.
Still in campaign mode.
It's absolutely in campaign mode. Every time he starts a presentation, a sentence, a press conference, it's with, "Boy, weren't we great? You folks that we're talking to, you put me over the top." It's really disconcerting. But I think down the line, I don't think we're anywhere near the conclusion of where this is going.
Right.
I think that the FBI investigation is going to be more telling than certainly the House Intelligence Committee. That is no longer valid in my mind. You've got the vice chair or co-chair of the committee who has basically become a Trump stooge, and we really need to be nervous about this. I mean, we're seeing the three branches of government. The lines between them are blurring now. We should be very concerned. And I think there's lots more to come.
A lot of resistance from the judiciary when it comes to checking presidential power. This is how it's supposed to work.
This is how it's supposed to work, and the legislative branch, especially the Intelligence Committee, is supposed to have oversight over some of the executive branch's dealings with foreign governments during the campaign. And that was completely obliterated when Devin Nunes went to the White House to get information. Gee, I wonder where that came from. And it goes both ways, too. The top Democrat on that committee said he has seen more than circumstantial evidence that there was collusion.
Right.
Well, we haven't seen that. I don't know that that's true. So, I mean, they're all kind of falling into this, I don't want to say McCarthyism, but that's basically what it is. You throw out these little teases, but you really don't have any facts behind them. You know, I know that there are communists in the State Department back then,
How many
and now we're
communists?
saying, well, I know that the Russians colluded, and we don't know.
Sure. We've been studying this fake news epidemic all semester in class. We put together a television show earlier in the semester. So our studio audience here is my core of students that worked on that. So they're student journalists themselves.
Excellent.
So what I'd like to do now is go to a couple of those students for some questions for you.
Absolutely.
So here we go.
Hi, I was wondering how you went about creating your own media outlet.
Well, it was more of a sort of an experiment. But then again, that's how a lot of things come about. Although I had a chief of staff at the General Assembly who, when was pitched on the idea of an experiment, told us, 90% of the experiments fail and all the pieces inside are killed. So it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be successful. But it was a bit of an experiment. It was fun. It was something that I could do fairly easily to start with. And I just built it piece by piece by piece, reached out to different folks that already had their media outlets, sort of found out how they did it, learned from them. It's always a learning experience. I mean, I learn something every day. I mean, just the other day I was trying to figure out how to put a certain thing and embed it into my website. I could figure it out, been looking at it for weeks, and then finally it was like, whoa, that's how you do it. It's fairly easy. So you listen to other folks, and don't be afraid to hang yourself out there. Don't be afraid to go out on the limb. If it gets cut off, so what? You climb back up again.
Grow a new arm.
Grow a new arm, exactly.
We have Ryan up next.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, Ryan.
You've been in the political business for a while. You've been on, news networks. You've been in newspapers. Have you ever had instances where you've been misquoted, or you've seen, people that that have been misquoted and been misinterpreted, or have been taken out of context? Have you ever seen that?
Well, yes and no. I think, first of all, we should sort of define taken out of context. It used to mean if I said, well, you know what, the Republicans think that's a terrible bill. And they'll cut it up and say, it's a terrible bill coming from me. That's out of context. Saying something stupid or not factual or bizarre, and then deciding, gee, I shouldn't have said that, that's not out of context. That's what the answer is. Oh, I was taken out of context, which to them means, shouldn't have said it, sorry. I've never been badly quoted out of context. I have seen some folks do it, but it's more scarce than you think. Every time somebody claims that they were misquoted, chances are they weren't. They were just, they're sorry they said it. It happens every once in a while.
What's the difference?
I think one of the ones that sticks in my mind is there was a Labor Department official who had given a speech in the Obama administration, and just the way I kind of described it, she was stating the opposite view of what she really believed in the bigger context of the speech. That was
Yes, I
taken,
remember
disseminated everywhere, and she lost her job. So it's a dangerous thing when it's misquoted, but I think it's rarer than people think.
Pat was up next. I wanted to ask you a question about media outlets, I think.
So what are some differences between the different types of media that you've experienced in your career, and which one do you prefer?
Well, they're all different, and I think as I've gone through my career, the thing that stands out is they've gotten more immediate. Back when I was a radio reporter, you interviewed the person, you come back, you cut up the sound, you put it in a few newscasts. It's fine. Even in when I was doing a lot of TV work, that was more immediate. But at the same time, you knew the topic, you knew what was going on. You sort of, you put together the thoughts ahead of time. Social media, it's even further out there. It's now. And anytime, the faster that it has to be produced, the faster it has to be overturned, the faster it has to move on to the next subject, the more risk is that it's going to be wrong, or at least be flawed. So I'm not crazy about the immediacy of social media, although I do like the fact that it reaches so many people so easily. When I was a fill-in radio host in Hartford, it was a 50,000 watt station. I was talking to tens of thousands of people right there and then. Social media, I have a number of in the thousands of followers on Facebook and on Twitter. A lot of them I don't know who they are, but it's right then and there, and it could change, especially lately. It changes by the hour, let alone the day. So you really have to be. I had a professor that used to say, "Get it right, get it first, but get it right first," and that's sort of what I still try to live by.
Jessica.
Kind of along the lines of what Ryan was just asking, you've been on so many news stations, Fox, CNN. When you're on all of these kind of social media, not social media, sorry. Mainstream, sorry, thank you, networks. Does your beliefs kind of change to fit the organization that you are being interviewed at, or what kind of is the process?
Well, the short answer is no. You're on there to give your views. This is going to sound strange. I sort of prefer to have a counter point of view with the host or with another guest. It's fun. It makes it fun. It makes it challenging. You get the ideas out there. Whose idea is best? Throwing it around. I've appeared on Fox News channel during the day, which most people believe, and I agree, has a more conservative bent, especially the evening talk shows are just very conservative. And MSNBC is the opposite. It's very liberal, including its night talk shows. But I would never, I may change the way I present it, but I certainly am not going to change the viewpoint that I hold to try to fix it. In fact, I would probably lean towards being more of a contrarian than I would to go along. I did do Bill O'Reilly's show. In that case, we had the same point of view, believe it or not. So that was very easy to do. But I've done a lot of Fox shows that I was going counter to what was being said. And, when you're at that level, they're all professionals. There's no cheap shots, really. If you're on one of the talk shows, maybe. But straight news, you get up there, you believe what you believe, and that's the worst possible thing that can happen, is that you change your convictions and change your views because of the outlet you're on. You may address it differently, like I said, because it's an older audience. If I'm speaking to a school, I'll put it out there differently. Again, back to the core. Know your audience and know how to tell the story to them.
And know yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly right.
So with being on a show like that, like O'Reilly, he tends to aggravate in order to create the buzz, right? So how do we show people what the news is? We call that news, but it's not really news.
Yeah.
These are commentators, and they're on a news channel, but these shows are not news. They're simply analysis with maybe a partisan bent to them.
There's no doubt that there are platforms for their point of view. And rarely, especially on some of these late night shows, Rachel Maddow on the left, Sean Hannity on the right, they're not news. I mean, they may bring up an issue that's in the news, but the way they portray it, and it can be flawed from the start. Sean Hannity did an entire show on how, because Hillary Clinton stumbled going into a car, she had some sort of mental incapacity, neurological disorder. Conversely, Rachel Maddow just a couple of weeks ago held up these tax returns. We've got President Trump's tax returns. She didn't have anything. She had something that any one of us could have written, and in fact proved that the president paid a lot of taxes. So yeah, they have their agenda, and they're going to force it that way. And even Hannity himself, I'm a source of news, said, people got to know the difference between commentary and news, and I agree with that, but they're the ones that are blurring the line. His radio show starts with the best news during the election, the best election news available.
Yeah.
Well, it's not. It's not even close.
Yeah, it's not news.
It's not news.
Right.
Not news at all.
That's a primary source. News is something that's happening.
Something that's
not
happening.
talking
It's
about what's
factual.
happening.
And actually, their motto, "We report, you decide," that's actually the way to do it. They just don't do it.
They don't do it.
You know, it's a great slogan. It's great but if you put it in practice, it's great, and they usually don't.
And it's, you know, when I talk about that, we talk about the economics of creating a news show. You can see that when you watch ABC World News Tonight. I turn that on with my kids at home. We watch that for half an hour every night as a family. And I think that's important because they need to see what's happening.
Yeah.
And those are actual reports. Those are not, you know, commentators just going on and on. You could see where the money goes in a show like that. But then there's CNN. You know, and I almost feel bad for them. I feel bad for these cable networks because they take the budget that they've got that ABC might spend on a half an hour,
Yeah.
and then CNN's got to spend it for 24 hours.
Right.
And you could see how cheaply made those shows are, kind of like, you know, what we're doing here,
Well-
where you have a panel that just keeps bringing those things up and up and up.
Yeah. Well, I'm impressed by the production values.
Oh, thank you.
But you're right. I did the Today Show once, and you go in there, and they iron your suit jacket, and they've got this gigantic spread of food for you when you go in. And of course, that's one of the oldest running shows going, surpassed by Meet the Press, I guess. And then you go to CNN, and they just throw you in the chair.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll put makeup on you, sometimes not.
Maybe not.
Maybe not, and you look all washed out. But yeah, there's certainly differing production values for sure, and CNN is also at a disadvantage because they're constant. They're 24 hours. Their news cycle overturns constantly, whereas the nightly news shows, ABC and World News Tonight and NBC Nightly News, they can spend the day preparing for 1.5 hour.
Exactly.
So the cable networks, for all their flaws, are at a disadvantage when it comes to putting a quality package together.
Right. Well, this has been a wonderful experience. Thank you to our studio audience out there and Jessica for asking those great questions. Thank you, sir. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. My pleasure. That's a great.
Let's hear it for Mr. Scully. Thank you for joining us on Media Matrix. We'll see you next time.